There's a certain kind of silence that settles in when you're alone with yourself. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of delay. The kind where your to-do list echoes in your chest. Where the clock ticks louder than your heartbeat. Where your dreams feel close enough to touch, but too far to start. You sit there not because you don't care, but because somewhere deep inside you're afraid to begin. Not afraid of the work, but of what the work will say about you if you fail. Most people think procrastination is laziness, that it's a lack of ambition, a lack of effort, a lack of discipline. But that's not the truth. Because the people who procrastinate are often the ones who care the most. They just carry the weight of doing it right. And that pressure, it doesn't paralyze the lazy. It paralyzes the dreamers, the perfectionists, the visionaries, the ones who see the future so vividly they're afraid to take the first step in case it doesn't look like the picture in their mind. There's a part of us that wants to act, the rational decision maker. That quiet voice in our mind that sees the bigger picture, that plans, that calculates, that wants to build a life we're proud of. But that voice doesn't live alone. There's another voice too, a louder one, a sneakier one, the instant gratification monkey. He doesn't care about your goals. He doesn't care about legacy. He just wants to feel good right now, and he's got a million distractions ready to throw in your path. Funny videos, useless browsing, endless scrolling, tasks that feel like productivity but never touch your real purpose. And so the battle begins. You sit down to work, and suddenly you're checking your email for the 5th time. You open the document, and somehow you end up watching a video about how paint dries in different climates. You tell yourself you'll start in 5 minutes, but 5 minutes turns into 5 hours, 5 hours into 5 days. And before you know it, the thing that mattered most has become the thing you're now running from. And here's the twist. Nobody sees this fight but you. On the outside, everything looks fine. You're just thinking, just waiting for the right time, just not ready yet. But inside, it's a war zone, a battle between your future and your fear, a silent, invisible resistance that chips away at your confidence, not because you don't know what to do, but because every day you don't do it confirms a lie. The lie that maybe you're not capable, but then something happens. A deadline appears. The pressure mounts. The panic monster wakes up. Suddenly, that fog you've been living in starts to clear. Not because you want it to, but because you have to. Because the consequences have finally caught up. And for a brief moment, the rational decision maker grabs the wheel. You dive in. You work like someone possessed. And somehow, against all odds, you finish. You pull it off. Barely. But the work is rushed. The vision is diluted. And you're left with something that's done, but not what you dreamed it could be. And deep down you know you weren't lazy. You were scared. Scared of not living up to the image in your head. Scared that starting would mean confronting your own limitations. Scared that if you gave it your all and failed, you'd lose the belief that you were ever capable in the first place. But let me tell you something powerful. The fear of failure is a shadow. It grows in the absence of light. It thrives in your silence, in your hesitation, in the space between idea and action. But when you move, when you speak, when you try, when you stumble forward, it shrinks. Because fear hates motion. It can't keep up with momentum. Dale Carnegie said, "Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. You don't wait until you feel ready. You act your way into readiness. You don't need a perfect plan. You need movement. Because movement builds confidence, and confidence opens doors. And that confidence, it doesn't come from proving you're better than others. It comes from proving to yourself that you're capable of beginning, that you can show up even when it's hard, that you can take a step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. That's how you build the kind of inner confidence that's unshakable. And when you have that, something changes. You stop trying to manipulate results. You stop trying to force people to see your worth. Instead, you radiate it. You influence without pushing. You attract without chasing. Because people can feel when you're grounded, when you're real, when you're not hiding behind perfection, but standing in honest intention. Influence isn't about control. It's about resonance. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the clearest, the most aligned, the one who speaks not to impress, but to connect. You want to win people. Be genuinely interested in their stories, in their struggles, in their dreams. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And when someone feels seen, really seen, they don't just listen to you. They trust you. That's the essence of Dale Carnegie's philosophy. Not persuasion, not performance, presence, empathy, the ability to step outside yourself and enter someone else's world, not to fix them, but to understand them. And that is what changes everything. But even when you live with intention, even when you care deeply, you will be criticized. People will misunderstand you, judge you, try to box you in. And when that happens, your instinct might be to fight, to defend, to shrink. But remember this, criticism is not always an attack. Sometimes it's feedback, sometimes it's projection, and sometimes it's a test of whether your voice belongs to them or to you. You don't owe everyone an explanation, but you do owe yourself the courage to keep going, not with arrogance, but with empathy. Empathy not just for others, but for yourself, for your stumbles, your learning curve, your humanness. Because empathy, when practiced deeply, leads to something even more powerful, connection. And in that connection, you'll find the meaning you've been chasing. Not in the applause, not in the achievements, but in the moment your words help someone else feel less alone. That's the real magic of communication. It doesn't just move information, it moves emotion, it moves lives. But here's the part we forget. Communication is not just about speaking, it's about listening. Listening with your full presence, with your whole body, not just to respond, but to receive. When you listen like that, you give someone the rare gift of being understood. And that kind of listening, it changes people, it changes relationships, it changes destiny. Because destiny isn't written in big moments. It's written in the quiet ones, the coffee chats, the late night talks, the way you look someone in the eye and say, "I'm here," the way you notice what they didn't say, and respond with care. That's where connection lives. That's where leadership lives. That's where you live. And if you want your voice to matter, you need to build it on appreciation, not condemnation. Because anyone can criticize, but it takes wisdom to uplift. It takes strength to encourage. It takes vision to believe in people before they believe in themselves. That's what makes leaders unforgettable. They don't just point out flaws, they reveal potential. And that kind of leadership, it starts with humility. The kind of humility that says, "I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to learn, to serve, to grow." It's the quiet strength of the person who doesn't need to dominate to be heard, who doesn't need to be right to stay kind, who doesn't need the spotlight to make an impact. Because impact isn't about noise, it's about resonance. It's about how deeply your presence lands in someone's life. And to show up like that requires resilience. Not the kind that toughs it out, but the kind that understands people. That gives grace. That holds space. That sees the pain beneath the outburst, the insecurity beneath the arrogance, the longing beneath the anger. When you understand people, you stop fighting them. You start lifting them. You stop reacting and start responding. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not because you're forceful, but because you're compassionate. So if you're sitting there waiting to start, waiting to feel ready, waiting for the perfect moment, don't. Start where you are, with what you have. Speak what's true. Act with care. Move with purpose. Not because the world is watching, but because you are. And your future self, they're counting on you. Not to be perfect, but to begin. Because the calendar is ticking. The boxes of your life are filling. And one day you'll look back, not on what you dreamed of doing, but on what you did. So make it count. Not someday. Not when it's safe. Not when it's easy. Now.